Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to 5-Minute Mornings yet again. Today's Monday, and I think it's time to get excited because this week has the potential to be a little bit different than other weeks. Here's my goal for us this week. Today we're going to set a goal. We're going to set a very simple goal. We're going to set a very easy goal for you to achieve. And then I'm going to check in with you on Wednesday about it. And I'm going to offer you some ways that you could overcome whatever is getting in the way of you accomplishing that goal, if that exists. And if you have nothing standing in the way, then that's fantastic. And then on Friday, we're going to see, did that goal happen or not? And then we're going to have a snapshot of what it would look like if you set a goal around something that made you feel ecstatic, made you feel excited, made you feel more alive, more vibrant. And it really asks the question, what would it be like if we did this more in our life? And I know I talk about goals a lot. And here's why. And this is what I want to offer you today, because I think it's super important and it's been very crucial to my own life. And it's the idea of taking on a mindset of perhaps life itself is actually a game. And that might sound a little strange at first, and I'll invite you to kind of go with me today as we walk through what that might mean. Because if life is a game, what you could do is imagine your favorite game, your favorite sport, whatever it is, any type of game, and you could kind of imagine it in one area of your awareness. And in this one area of your awareness, what you could do is you could imagine an entire cycle of that one game within about 2 or 3 seconds. If it's soccer, can you imagine what it would be like for that game to start and finish within 2 or 3 seconds? And what you could see. Because what you could see is there's a start, there's a finish, and then there's strategies that the teams themselves are employing in the hopes that they will win. And now here's the important part, because within a game, winning is, I think, has to be, if it's a real game, I think there has to be a definition of what winning is in that game. Otherwise, how could you win? Or when would the game stop? I'm not quite sure. I don't know of a game that doesn't have a goal of, if you achieve it, then you win. In soccer, the idea is that you're supposed to score more goals than the other team. That's how you win. And I like soccer because you can actually tie in soccer, and that seems to be a little bit more how life is. It's not always winning and losing. Sometimes there's mediation. Sometimes there's something other than winning and losing. And it's not just a third option, but I think there's also a fourth option and a fifth option and an infinite amount of options within the spectrum of winning and losing. That's kind of why I like soccer. And just keep that in your awareness. But that's kind of how a game works. It starts, it stops. There's teams. I don't think there has to be teams. Like, think of golf. You are your own team. But it starts and stops, and there's rules, and there's a defined way that you can win. I want you to kind of keep that going, those 2 to 3 seconds, and it starts and it stops, and it starts and it stops, and kind of keep that going for a second. And on the other side of your awareness, I want you to imagine that you go back to being born yourself. And that you can move time all the way to where you are now. And that is just an experience of you knowing what it's like to have a start. And if you kind of forget that for a second while keeping this game going, I want you to just think of a human being in general. And can you think of a human being being born, going throughout its life, and at some point, the life of that human being ends. And in the middle, there's all these various experiences, kind of like a sport, where sometimes there's winning, sometimes there's losing within the game itself. And then what if you could zoom in even further on that human life and see that there's actually games being played within the game of life? That there's the game of education, that there's the game of health, that there's the game of finances, and maybe an infinite amount of games as far as we can define them. And the question is, if you can imagine that person's life starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping, constantly, while imagining, in the same amount of time, 2 or 3 seconds, while imagining a game 2 or 3 seconds being played. Can you see those as similar? Because I think they are. And I think if you think about life as a game, it affords us two really important aspects or differentiations. The first one is, in the game of being a human, you can actually create another human being. That's incredible. You know, in the game of whatever sport you're playing, that's not necessarily the case. But what if it is? What if the thing that's being created out of the sport is a representation of what it's like to be a human in a state of excellence? What if that's the birth or the life that's given from that sport? And maybe that's why we consume sports so much. I mean, it really is incredible when you think about the money that's spent and the amount of focus that we give to sports. It's pretty radical if you think about it. There's a lot of money there. And you could equate money with attention, because that's typically how it works. The more attention something has, typically the more money it has in it too. Now, the other aspect of why I think life is actually a sport, I don't think it's an analogy, actually. I think if you think about life actually as a sport, it makes everything a lot more easy. Because again, within the sport, there's rules. And you could say, as you've lived your life, you've found certain rules that have allowed you to succeed, certain strategies that would allow you to win the game, so to speak, in the sport, that allows you to win the game in the discrete sport that you're playing currently in life. You know, those sports of keeping a roof over your head, the sport of, or the game of rather, relationships with other people. You know, these various games that we play as human beings. What if there's actually rules to them? And the game of finance, there are hard and fast rules. In the game of the universe, mathematics, there are hard and fast rules. And those seem to change over time as we become smarter as a group of human beings, which is really exciting. And that's the challenge. Because if you can adopt the idea of life as a sport, you can start to play the game within the rules. And something else that really is cool from that analogy of sports is when we get better at sports, it's because usually we practiced. We spent some time away from playing the sport, because playing the sport is not necessarily a time to change anything in practice and get necessarily better, even though you probably do by just playing the sport. And this is said a lot in golf, in that if you're playing golf and you're constantly trying to adjust your swing while playing the game of golf, it's been told to me by people who know golf better than I do, that maybe a better strategy is to adjust your swing on the driving range and get it tuned in on the driving range, and then go play golf without trying to adjust your swing, but just trying to play the sport itself. As one moment in time, each stroke. Golf is a beautiful sport in that way. Because everything is finite. Everything is one shot. You swing the club, you walk to the ball, and you do it again. And the challenge really is, can you forget what happened just before? Because if you can do that, every time you hit that ball is the first time you hit the ball. And you don't have the baggage of what happened just previously. So there's a ton of benefits to taking on the mindset that life actually has rules. That if we can follow some of these rules that we already know for ourselves, and the better we can define these rules, maybe the more helpful they become, and maybe the better our lives become. I think it's highly likely. And I think that's where you get documents like religious documents, like the Bible, for example. I think that's where you get things like the Ten Commandments. I think those are the past's way of creating rules to the game of life. Because something might happen if you started to follow a certain set of rules, and you really committed yourself to those. And I know you know this because you already do this. So what are some of the rules that you already follow in life that are getting you great results? What are some of the ways that you become even closer to your family members and your friends? And the flip side of that question is actually very valuable. What are the ways, or what are the strategies that we use, and hear me on this, and I say this because I know this in myself. What are the strategies we use on a regular basis that allow us to get the results we don't want? You know, as much as focusing on the things that we do to get us great results is fantastic, we also need to at least look at what are the things in our life that we do that aren't getting us the results we want, and how can we start to make small changes over time in order to better that part of our life? And what if that's okay? What if everybody has that? What if that just means in that part of our life we're kind of in the minor leagues, so to speak? How do we become a professional at that part of our life, if that is a game? How do we practice that? How do we become improved over time? Small bits, piece by piece. You know, Roger Bannister, he broke the 4-minute mile. It's said not because he had a goal of, say, 3 minutes. No. He was focused on very small pieces of progress. His goal was 3 minutes and 59 seconds and like 6/10. Just below 4 minutes. And he thought, well, if someone can do 4 minutes, I surely can do just the slightest amount below that. And that's exactly what he did. As he broke the 4-minute mile, and he gave us an example. He gave birth, in a way, to an example of how to live, of how to get a better result in your life as a human being. By setting a goal, by setting it in a way that is very intentional and quite brilliant, actually. And I say brilliant because he got that result that he wanted. And I think that's one definition of brilliance. So how could you live your life in a way that's fun, that you can allow yourself to practice? That's a game. Games are fun. Games are exciting. Yeah, they can be nerve-wracking and they can be sad when we lose. Yet, what do we do when we lose? Does that motivate us to practice more and get better? I sure hope so. And that's certainly what I wish for you. And I wish it for me too, because it's very important. So today's a little different, because now I want us to set a goal, a very small goal. And the question is, what's something that you're very passionate about in your life? And how can you add just a little bit more of that into what you do this week? So if you're passionate about sports, how can you involve yourself in your favorite sport for at least 5 minutes this week? And what would that do? How would that make you feel? And then when you felt differently and you interacted with other people, how would they notice you differently? And how would that make them feel? And then how can we create that processional effect outward from us? Because we're taking control and we're affecting how we feel. We're mastering our emotions. And that's the reason my slogan on my website is, if you can master your emotions, you truly can master your life. And there's a lot of depth in there that I'll explain as I talk more. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. So set that goal. I'm going to check in with you on Wednesday about it, and then we're going to celebrate it on Friday. Okay? And one other piece. Put the goal that you're setting right now out into the world. Tell someone about it. Tell us about it. Post it in the comments. Or send me an email directly if you don't feel comfortable with that. Send me an email at support, as in your support for you, at SeanMarkinet.com. Now the easiest way to do that is just go to my website and go to the contact form. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. I wish you happiness and progress, not just today, not just this week, but for the rest of your life. See you soon.